Hello and blessings, Coven. This little screen recorded sketch was created to help to explain some of the influences that I encourage you to bring into your altar preparation. And so as you can see, the center section is you, the witch, and all things to consider about you. And every arrow that goes in is an influence that I encourage you to consider bringing into your altar space to help to make it a robust reflection of not just who you are, where you come from, where you live, your goals, your tastes, your motivations, your ancestry, and so forth. I've included a religious beliefs section here because there are many that come to the craft from various outside religious beliefs, and I wanted to make space for that here. And I do apologize for the quality. I did not realize at the time of the recording that the frame rates were pretty weak in the screen capture, but I decided to inject this video in here nonetheless because it took me a great deal of time to figure out how to do, and when it was finally done, I didn't want to have wasted that time. So I hope you enjoy this. It was a very new type of practice and media process for me to include here. But I hope that this helps you, and I hope that you consider what it is that I have included here. Thank you.
Hello and blessings, beautiful Coven of the Witch Weaver. How are you today? It is so nice to be sitting here with you and going through the next part of our exploration of altars. Now, during my first altar video that I recently posted, which unfortunately glitched and went live to all of Patreon, sorry about that. I chose to not do anything about that because what was done was done. And I thought, hey, if that's how Spirit wants it, let it be. But this is going to be a concerted effort to remain private, as all my others. And so let's get stuck into it. Now, during my first exploration of altars, I spoke of energy transference, and I asked if anyone would like to know more about energy transference, then I would be happy to explain that. And it really does pertain to not just your altar, but also to your magical tools and your magical spaces as well. So let's get stuck into this. Right, so as witches, we carry ritual with us wherever we go. We manage to establish beautiful sacred spaces in which to do our witches' work within. And no place is more sacred than the altars which we choose to create when we can, in keeping with our personal circumstances. Now, I did mention that not everyone will have the opportunity to have a full-time altar, a forever established altar for that matter, and as such, there are still many other options at your disposal. At the end of the day, nothing beats a nature altar. Nothing. Even some of the most beautiful altars I have ever made will not beat a nature altar. So always keep that in mind, because when we go outside and everything is in alignment, we can create beautiful magic on the bare earth. It's a beautiful thing indeed. So back to this subject of energy transference, and the light is fluctuating a little bit, so I do apologize for that. But what I wanted to say was that As human beings, we have a lot of energy coursing through our bodies each and every day. We have 7 auric layers, we have 7 primary chakra points within our body, and then hundreds and hundreds of little chakra points within our hands and so forth. We have hair, saliva, tears, oil within our skin itself, and the energy that just radiates from our body. And so we know in modern forensics that if we touch something, that a police officer could come through and dust the surface and extract our fingerprints, and that is because we leave marks wherever we place our hands. It's as simple as that. Now beyond that, that's the physicality of what I'm talking about, but beyond that we leave an energetic and an emotional imprint on that which we touch. And so let's say you have your beautiful altar, as I do mine right here, and a friend, an acquaintance comes in, sits at your altar and starts to sort of like, you know, pick up, oh, that's not, oh yeah, look, this is a cool crystal, oh yeah, what's this thing over here, oh, rattle, rattle, you know, and just go through your shit. And it's happened to me before a number of times, and it's awkward when they do. And I've got to say that each and every time something like that takes place, the energy of your altar, of your sacred space, of your temple is then tarnished. I know that this is a little bit on the sensitive side, and it really does relate heavily to our understanding of energy, our awareness of energy, and many people will perceive energy in different ways, and there are some that are very, very good at perceiving the subtleties of energy, and there are others that are still on that beginning phase of opening up their awareness towards the subtleties of energy. So no matter where you are and who you are and how long you've been at this game, if you will, of energy reading and the awareness of energy, just know that you are going to be susceptible to energetic influence. Now, take for instance, when you walk into a house and you get that heebie-jeebie feeling, or you just get that sensation that something in that house is not quite right. When a house is haunted, it often leaves that impression on one, especially someone who is very subtle, or very sensitive, I should say, to energy. And so, with that in mind, when somebody has argued in a room, when a couple has perhaps quarreled, or siblings have quarreled in a space, and you walk into that space, you will feel the emotional baggage just lingering like a bad smell. You will feel it, and the more sensitive to energy you are, the more you will feel it. Likewise, when somebody comes to your altar and starts to touch your altar and your ritual tools, some of that energetic and emotional energy is going to transfer from the individual to your tools. So the next time that you choose to use your tools, or you do magic in your altar area, your sacred space, that tool, that sacred space is going to have that little piece of that someone else in there. And I don't know about you, but I prefer the energy of my sacred spaces to be what I refer to as intact, meaning no one touches. No one comes in, no one touches. I don't have to bother myself with clearing and cleansing and reprogramming and doing all those cumbersome things that we sometimes have to do when people, through lack of respect or through lack of knowing, come through and begin to touch our ritual tools. It's as simple as that. So energy transference is something that is real. I don't want the emotions and the energetic baggage of another person. No matter how well I know that person, I don't want that energy in my sacred space. I prefer to have the energy in my sacred space be indicative of myself and my ancestry and my guides, my gods, and that is it. And so When we choose to bring another individual into our magical practice and share our tools in our sacred space, we have to be confident that that person is in a state of groundedness and centeredness and emotional equilibrium before they start to move through our spaces. Now, this can be very, very difficult to ensure. And so my altar up north, and so my coven up north, we had a habit of gathering for ritual in different locations each and every time, and we were each responsible for bringing elements of ritual to create a combined altar. And this ensured that nobody's altar was in any way tainted, energetically speaking, and that the focus was in building a space that reflected both parties. And that's exactly what you would need to do if you are practicing in unison with another, is to build a space that reflects both tastes, both people. And so there are many, many things to consider, but creating boundaries and educating others on our altars and the treatment of our magical tools can be some of the first steps that we take when we are attempting to create sacred space in areas that are frequented by others. So I don't know what your living situation is, but I have the luxury of having a cottage all to myself. This does not mean that my children don't come in here. It just means that they don't come in here unsupervised and they don't come in here all that often. So I can, in part, keep this place very, very well intact. Now, I don't consider my children's hands to be something that I need to be concerned with, because they are not at an age where they can really cultivate that emotional baggage. My children are very well treated. They're happy little kids that are well looked after, and so I don't have that worry with them. It's when they come into their adult phase that I will have some concern, or even their teenage years where their emotions will be quite volatile. That's when I'm going to have that concern. So these are things to consider as well. Now, you may be sharing space with a partner, you may be sharing space with siblings, you may be sharing space with housemates that you don't know all that well, or just mates that you're living with that you do know pretty well, but still. And you may be sharing space with your parents. And so you never know, when you're erecting your altars and your sacred spaces, just who may one day happen upon that. And so if you are creating an altar in an area that will be frequented by another, and that other may in some way, shape or form be able to access your altar, it is best for you to have the conversation about boundaries, and not just your altar but your magical tools ahead of time, so that you avoid the awkwardness of that conversation after things happen, and then the metaphysical maintenance that you will need to do after that type of occurrence takes place. Now, in the notes section of this week's video, I have included some personal stories about some issues that I have had with my altars in the past. And let me tell you that they're real, and at the time they were quite emotionally de-stressing. Now, had I taken the time to really articulate my position on altars and lay down the law and place those boundaries down, I may have well avoided those situations. So it pays to be very clear and open about how it is that you would like for others to care for your altar, whether you prefer them to not be near it at all, or whether or not you're okay with them coming in on occasion and touching and maybe, you know, meditating and pulling a card, if that's something that you're comfortable doing. And so it comes down to you and how sensitive you are to reading energy. And we all know how powerful energy can be. We all know the feeling of walking into a space and getting that heebie-jeebie sensation. We all know how tangible and how tactile and how palpable the sensation or the emotional of sadness is lingering in a room. And that is because, to a degree, we have a natural subtlety towards emotional energy and the way that that emotional energy can occupy a space. And I'm not even specifically referring to haunted houses, although you know when a place is haunted. You just feel it in your bones. You just do. And that's all about energy, how we naturally process energy, how we feel about it, and how we feel it. And so depending on how you are as far as your energetic and emotional sensitivities go, will also help you to determine what kind of measures you will need to take in regards to your altars and your tools. And so if you're the type of person that doesn't really give a shit about people touching your ritual tools, it doesn't bother you, you don't see there to be a need to be so full on about your ritual items and your ritual tools, that's totally fine as well. I'm not trying to put this into your head, I'm simply trying to talk about this with you because it is something that is quite well known about just the sacredness of temple spaces and how easy it is to sully an area or to have one sullied that belongs to you. I'm not trying to make this a paranoid conversation by any stretch of the imagination. It is definitely something worth considering, particularly if you are very sensitive to energy. Now, I'm a truly, truly sensitive person when it comes to energy, and I had the blessing of being raised in a house that had many an altar and shrine. And so I have been educated from a young age on how it is that I am to behave within the context of these altar spaces, and how it is that I can handle that which is featured on these altars and shrines. And so I have a certain level of altar etiquette under my belt as a result of that early education and that exposure to altars and shrines. Now, how you choose to go about this subject is entirely up to you. Your way is your way, my way is my way, and you do not need to make your way my way or my way your way for that matter. So it's something for you to just consider, and some of which I may have mentioned in this video may have rung a bell to you and you're like, yeah, I totally understand that, I totally get that, and some of it might be like, nah, I don't really care. And that's totally fine. The idea here is to make you aware, and if you're concerned, then take measures. If you're not concerned, then don't worry about it. It's as simple as that. Take it or leave it at the end of the day. But it is a worthy thing to talk about because it is something that makes up a huge part of my ritual lifestyle, if you will, and something that I do concern myself with quite often as a result of that, and something that I will continue to concern myself with for many years to come, because as I get older I get more energetically sensitive, and that is because of the type of work that I do and how I choose to dedicate myself to my own intuitive developments. And so the more you work on your intuitive faculties, the more you will become sensitive to energy, and the more you will understand the role that energy plays in ritual, in magic spell casting, in the nature of your tools, your ritual objects, your sacred temples, your sacred spaces, and so on and so forth. So all good things to consider, and that is energy transference in the simplest form for you. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you find it helpful, and I hope that it inspires you to consider your altar in a unique way, and also the interaction of your altar with others, and the interaction that others might have with your ritual tools for that matter. So there you have it. I will be speaking to you next week about another tantalizing topic. So much love and many blessings, beautiful coven. I hope that you are enjoying this Earth Element series, and I can honestly say that I'm very grateful for having slowed down with this exploration of the elements, because there is so much that we can cover. I am going to be speaking on the subject of crystals next month, and that's probably going to take us a few weeks to get through, because our crystal allies are their very own type of magic, but they are still a huge part of Earth, the Earth Kingdom, and as such do need to be included in this particular elemental exploration. So there was another video about Earth, and I will be talking to you next week. Have fun, beautiful coven. Mwah!